What's up guys, coming at you with another Fortigate tutorial here. In this tutorial I'm going to show you how to add an external connector for an IP threat feed list. Now this can be any list. This can be a list on a website, this can be a list that somebody else curates, this could be your own private list, which is what I'm going to do today. That's how I'm going to set it up with my own private text file with a list of IP addresses that I want the Fortigate to pull from. This is a little bit cleaner than having to script out and import dozens, hundreds, or thousands of IP addresses into your Fortigate and kind of clutter your address book. So the first thing that you need to have is a text file with the IP addresses that you want to add to this threat feed, or that you want to connect to the Fortigate in this threat feed piece. That's what I have here. I have some malicious IPs that were associated with the most recent Exchange attack. I don't think this is a fully up-to-date list, but this was one that was put out at the beginning of the attacks. So once you have this text file created, I named mine threat feed, as you can see here. You also need to have the device that you're going to be spinning up your web server on. So I have mine on an Ubuntu server, so I just copied that threat feed file over to my Ubuntu server, and that's this window right here. So once you get your Ubuntu server set up and ready to go, and your file copied over, as you can see, my threatfeed.txt file is in my home directory. You're going to want to install Apache. So we're going to do a sudo apt get update, or sudo apt update. Okay, so once that's done, you're going to do a sudo apt install Apache. And I already have it installed on my server, but this is the command you would run, and it's just saying that you already have it installed. Once that's done, you need to copy that text file from whatever directory it's in to a specific directory to be available in the web GUI that Apache spins up. So what we're going to do a copy threat feed in the directory that we're in, and we're going to copy that to var www.html. This HTML folder directory is where the default index HTML file lives that Apache, I guess, creates. So we're going to copy this text file to that folder, and then we're just going to make sure everything's looking good. We're going to go to that folder, do a ls, and you can see here that your index file that Apache creates, your default is here, and then our new file is right here. Now if you go to the IP address of the server that you spun up, you should see the default Apache 2 splash page here. And then if we want to look at the text file that we put in that folder, we're going to do a slash and then the name of our text file. And as you can see, it's showing here in the format that we saved in our browser. So once you have this done, the web server piece is complete. You may have to alter your firewall on your web server. If it's active and blocking connections, you may have to do that. Also, there's one other piece. Sometimes you'll get a message that says forbidden when you try to access that text file. And mine is in a secure environment, so I felt comfortable doing this, but you just have to change the permissions. I did a chmod, sudo chmod, to change the read-write permissions on the file itself. So once you do this, if it was saying forbidden before, you should be able to view the text file after you do that chmod. Okay, once that's done, we can start working on the Fortigate piece. The way that you add this external connector is you go to your security fabric, external connector, and as you can see, I had two sample ones here while we were doing testing. Well, I was doing testing before the video, but we're going to go ahead, we're going to create a new one, As you can see, there are multiple different connectors that you can put here. And we're going to go down here into IP address. Once we're here, we're going to put the IP address of our server. And mine's a public IP, but you could spin this up on a local server, and it'll work the exact same. You can also put fully qualified domain name here as well. I put it in the wrong spot. Put it in the name spot. We're just going to call this malicious IP lab. Okay. HTTP basic authentication. We don't need this. We weren't using this. I'm not very familiar or well versed with Apache, so obviously this would be more secure if there's some way to implement this. If you know how, go right ahead, or put information in the comments on how to do that. Maybe a link. So I'd be interested in learning. Refresh rate. I don't plan on updating this list because I'm just doing this for the tutorial, but the refresh rate is going to be how often you want the Fortigate to check that text file for any updates. Because if you do add IP addresses to that text file at any time, the Fortigate will periodically check it. If new entries have been added, it'll update them. If entries have been removed, it'll remove them. So once we have all that in, our status is set to enabled. We're going to hit OK. And the one that we just created has this little gray check mark by it. I'm going to double click on it and saying unavailable, not updated, but I'm going to go ahead and manually refresh it. Sometimes it just takes a second. And it just takes a minute to read the entries in the file. Everything looks good here. We can actually view all the entries. And we want to make sure that we view these entries and we see these valid here. That lets us know that everything's working properly. Now, all of those IP addresses, we did not have to enter them in our address book, but the Fortigate recognizes them and we can create firewall rules with them. So I created a firewall rule just in testing. I called it malicious to inside from my wide area network to my home network. And source and destination is where you're going to select the threat feed group. So as you can see here, you have your addresses and your address groups, and then you also have, once you create one IP address threat feed connector, you'll see this option in the GUI when you go to create a firewall policy. So as you can see, the one that we just created was malicious IP lab, so I'll go ahead and I'll add that one as a source. Destination would be my internal network, so I'm going to leave that at all. I'm going to leave this as deny. And I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. So now any IP address that's in this text file in this list should be blocked from accessing anything on my home network. And you could obviously clone this policy and do an outbound block as well, which would be recommended in this case. But you can I think you can add the IP threat feed for anything that you can add a source or destination address to. So it's a really cool way if you don't want to have to script out and add hundreds of IP addresses inside your address book on the Fortigate to kind of keep it clean, but yet take care of anything that you need to with a lot of IPs. I hope that you enjoy this tutorial. If you have any questions, comments, if you do something differently, if you have any recommendations for the way that I did it, please leave it in the comments below. I'm always looking forward to learning more about these devices and their capabilities. So please let me know. And if you guys want to see me do a tutorial on something else regarding the Fortigate, drop that in the comment below as well. Till next time, guys, take care. Have a good one.